If it's Friday, President Biden gets a bipartisan win in Washington as Congress passes the debt ceiling deal, while his two most likely 2024 opponents are trading partisan jabs on the campaign trail. Plus, brand blowback and pride protests as some corporations find themselves in the midst of the culture war, facing boycotts and threats of violence over their support of the LGBTQ community. And a new wave of tensions between Kosovo and Serbia over ethnicity and governance and the future of democracy. The U.S. and the EU step up pressure on leaders to ease clashes as new NATO forces move in. I'll talk to Kosovo's prime minister about efforts to de-escalate. Happy Friday and welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Chuck Todd reporting from Washington, where fiscal calamity has been averted for now, and President Biden is gearing up to take a bit of a victory lap himself. Biden is set to make his first Oval Office address of his presidency in sort of prime time tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, as he signs a deal he cut with Speaker McCarthy to raise the debt ceiling. The Senate passed the debt ceiling bill last night by a bipartisan vote of 63-36. Percentage-wise, there were actually more Republicans against the deal in the Senate than in the House. Who had that on their bingo card? But this deal to avert default is a bipartisan victory for the president, despite the White House's messaging struggles short-term and the president's initial insistence that he would not negotiate with Republicans at all. There were stumbles, but Biden got back up. You know where I went. And it's a reminder that Biden's message has been and continues to be a form of unity. Here's what he said in his inaugural address.
We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America.
That message of unity is in stark contrast with what's going on with Biden's potential 2024 rivals on the Republican side. Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis have been spending the week slinging mud at each other on everything from term limits to who handled COVID better to abortion politics to whether or not to use the term woke, even though they both use it. Here's a bit of this week's back and forth.
When I heard DeSantis go out and say, and talk about 8 years. We need 8 years. You don't need 8 years. You need 6 months. We can turn this thing around so quickly. If you need 8 years, who the hell wants to wait 8 years? You don't need it.
He's not going to be able to nix the deep state in 6 months. He had 4 years. He didn't make a dent in it. Give me a break. And if he says he can do it in 6 months, why didn't he do it in the 4 years that he had?
We will fight the woke in the schools. We will fight the woke in the corporations. We will fight the woke in the halls of Congress. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob.
I don't like the term woke because I hear woke, woke, woke. You know, it's like just a term that half the people can't even define it. They don't know what it is.
Folks, it's more than half a year until the first primary ballots are cast, but this week could very well be a preview of what a long slog is going to look like in 2023, with the top two Republicans attacking each other. It potentially leaves President Biden an opening to make the clear contrast that he made with swing voters, with what he would be as president. And in some ways, this debt ceiling deal, while not anything to celebrate on the left, is the kind of deal he promised he would pursue if he had to. Joining me now on set is NBC News White House correspondent and our resident Bidenologist, Mike Memoli. Vaughn Hilliard is following the Trump campaign for us in Iowa, and Dasha Burns is quite literally in the moment following the DeSantis campaign in her car. She's not driving, I promise, and she has her seatbelt on in South Carolina. She joins us on the road between campaign stops. But let me start with Mr. Memoli here and what the White House is thinking. Look, we talked about this before. A short term, they always think about the long game well.
That's right.
They manage short-term messaging awful.
Really bad.
and right, they have their eye on that ball, and it seems to fall into place. I don't know how much of that is just their hesitance to use Joe Biden as a surrogate.
This is strategic, they say. I mean, it's easy to say now that they've got the win. But
right.
They say if the president had been out on a daily basis attacking Republicans who he's needed to get the votes from ultimately to get this over the finish line. They needed to give Speaker McCarthy the space to get yeses from his own conference. They wouldn't have gotten there. And it was interesting. Even Chuck Schumer was asked last night about a headline we've seen a lot this week, that Speaker McCarthy has been underestimated. Kevin McCarthy himself has been saying he's been underestimated. Well, the White House is now saying, hey, our guy has been pretty underestimated too. Right. We don't give him enough credit, they say, for all the bipartisan accomplishments he's done. And so tonight, the biggest platform a president has is an Oval Office address to the nation. And so they're planning to now start to make that argument. That
is this argument going to be to those swing voters that aren't big Biden? Maybe they're not big Democrats, they're not big Biden fans. I mean, is he going to try to calm the left down a little bit? Does he think he has to?
No, it's really about the former, because for as much as the 2020 campaign was dominated by the wrecking ball that is Donald Trump and COVID, the Biden team thinks they won because he convinced suburban, non-political, the quiet middle of the country that he would bring back stability and normalcy to Washington.
And this, for him, is Exhibit A.
And this is exactly what that is. And so this now really clears the deck for his shadow campaign, right, that he can now run in the next summer months here to really continue to talk about those economic accomplishments. An advisor told me today he's not going to be out there talking about his bipartisan deal with Speaker McCarthy. But as they said, this is bipartisanship. Campaigns are about contrast. But one of those contrasts is the chaos in the Republican primary while he's out showing economic progress in this country.
The fall. Right. This is the fear that I know the White House has, which is, a viral video can travel farther than any Oval Office address. Look, I think he got back up. To me, it's not a story. It's a story if he didn't get up. It's a story if he had gotten hurt. None of those things happened. How did the White House handle this? And how nervous are they about this thing?
This is a White House that just feels constantly star-crossed, that they can't win. One should have been really a celebratory moment for them. Really got now thrown off by the coverage. They, of course, are arguing is too much on our airwaves about this moment, but it really does underscore the challenge heading into re-election, that for as much as voters might think, hey, this guy's been a pretty good president, they're not sure he can do it for 4 more years.
Do they acknowledge that if it's not Trump on the other side, this is a much bigger problem?
They are continually saying they don't think that that's going to be the case, that Trump is going to be the nominee. But you certainly hear that from donors, that they are seeing Tim Scott and some of these new faces out there and thinking, oh, shoot.
They'll live with this issue if it's Trump.
If it's Trump.
But everything...
all those doubts reemerge in a big way.
If somehow Trump is off the stage.
That's exactly right.
Well, Trump being off the stage, an unlikely outcome at this point. Vaughn Hilliard, does anybody inside the Trump campaign at all think about how bad of a contrast this could be in a general election? The horrible Republican infighting compared to Biden getting to sort of play deal maker?
I think that this is a moment, Chuck. It's a good question here, because I think, as Mike laid out here, the efforts up on Capitol Hill of the Biden administration compared to Donald Trump, going around and attacking the most, popular governor across the country on the Republican side, it's quite a contrast. And, a lot of the voters we've talked to over the last weeks have also suggested to us sort of a little squirminess over Donald Trump going on the attack against Ron DeSantis. Two nights ago, in a local radio interview, a conservative radio host asked Donald Trump why he goes consistently on the attack against other Republicans. Last night on Fox, Sean Hannity asked him the same question. And notably, though, the crowd last night when Sean Hannity asked Donald Trump that question, they booed Hannity's suggestion that Donald Trump should take a step back. And Donald Trump made it very clear that you got to go and fight, suggesting that there are wars. And a Republican primary is a war. And we saw he did this 8 years ago, and he didn't suffer the political consequences. He won in the general election.
Speaking of that Hannity town hall, in his own softball way, the infotainment host did have a question about Mar-a-Lago. What did you learn?
Right. I think we could let's play a little bit of it, and I think it's insightful into the existence of Donald Trump living in a reality that is separate from the facts that we are gathering in real time. Take a listen.
First of all, do you know who this call may be with? Do you know anything about it?
No, I don't know anything about it. All I know is this. Everything I did was right. We have the Presidential Records Act, which I abided by 100%. Biden has 1,850 boxes with a lot of classified stuff that he's not supposed to have in his case. He had 7 or 8 boxes in Chinatown in Washington, D.C., where nobody even speaks English in Chinatown. Chinatown is it's in favor of China.
I don't even know where that's going.
Chuck, you see there Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Donald Trump there. There was no follow-up question from Hannity related to any of the specifics of this Iran-related document that he had suggested that he held on to in the course of that recording. But for Donald Trump, right now, it is simply the Department of Justice that is investigating him. There is no effort by Ron DeSantis or these other Republicans to use the classified documents case, to use the Manhattan District Attorney's criminal charges, or any of these other major cases against him. And we're 8 months away from the Iowa caucus, and he continues to hold this sturdy lead.
Well, I won't call you Jake Vaughn, but I might say, forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. Hey, very quickly, the debate, RNC put out some debate requirements. What do we think? Is Donald Trump showing up in Milwaukee for debates or not in August?
Well, our understanding was that he had no intention of showing up for the first two debates, but now the new thresholds just came out that really are going to make it difficult for those other candidates to not only hit the polling marks, but also they've got to get a certain number of donors to donate to their campaign to get on that debate stage. So in the scenario that it's just like a Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, there would be some pressure for him to get onto that debate stage. But, of course, the loyalty pledge is involved, and notably not a single candidate has committed to signing that loyalty pledge to support the eventual nominee. Donald Trump himself has suggested there's Republicans in this race he's not so sure about. So I don't know. Will we have a debate at all, Chuck? I'm still a little open-minded on that.
Well, it's the Midwest in June. I don't want to see you get blown away by a Midwestern storm, my friend. Vaughn Hilliard in Iowa.
It comes fast.
Yes, it does. Vaughn, thank you. All right, Dasha Burns driving right now in South Carolina following Ron DeSantis. So the most notable thing that we saw with Governor DeSantis between Iowa and New Hampshire was what he talked about in Iowa, what he didn't talk about in New Hampshire, which, of course, was abortion. What do we expect in South Carolina?
Well, look, Chuck, and just warn anyone looking to jump into this journalism job. This is how glamorous our lives are, chasing candidates around states. This is going to be my life for the next 18 months or so. But look, South Carolina, here's what's interesting. As I've been talking to voters here, this is a state that, let's not forget, Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, both from here, both presidential candidates. Both Trump and DeSantis have really been looking at this race as a two-man race. And I will tell you, not a single voter brought up any other name besides Trump and DeSantis. This was the state where I was looking to see if they would bring up anybody else as a potential alternative. And I did not hear that. The notable difference for me at the first event that I just went to, which was just outside of Lexington, the amount of time that Casey DeSantis has spent in front of voters. She has really been front and center this week in this campaign. As we know, there's been a lot of skepticism around the likability factor for Ron DeSantis. It seems that Casey is going to be sort of the secret weapon to soften his edges, if you will. And voters have been very, very responsive. They've been telling stories about their children when he gets on stage and sits next to her in this sort of fireside chat style format that they've been doing. He softens up and he becomes much looser and kind of a different type of candidate when he's on stage next to his wife. So that's kind of the big factor that I noticed. They've spent a lot more time together on stage in this latest round of visits. The other thing, Chuck, you talked about this, the contrast that they're really starting to sharpen between him and Trump. And I was surprised to hear Trump sort of step back from the term woke and that issue, whereas DeSantis, of course, is leaning in. I had a chance to ask him about this at the Rope Line earlier today. Take a listen to what he said.
Great.
The former president said he doesn't like to use the word woke. He said he doesn't like to use woke because people don't know what it means. That's obviously been a big part of your messaging. What do you say to that?
Look, we know what woke is. It's a form of cultural Marxism. It's about putting merit and achievement behind identity politics, and it's basically a war on the truth. And as that has infected institutions, it has corrupted a lot of institutions. So you've got to be willing to fight the woke. We've done it in Florida, and we proudly consider ourselves the state where woke goes to die. Thank you.
Chuck, it's an interesting area where they've splintered. There's been so much back and forth between, how many terms one needs to change the course of the country,
right,
to COVID response, to Disney, you name it. This is an all-out battle now, the first time we've really seen both of them go head-to-head.
It'll be fascinating, Albin, to see if Governor DeSantis, what he does, when or if the Justice Department speaks as soon as next week. Dasha Burns in South Carolina, literally on the road. Thank you. Thanks to Vaughn Hilliard in Iowa and Mike Memoli right here. Thank you, buddy. Coming up, Pride Month collides with the culture wars. How a wave of anti-LGBTQ protest is complicating this year's month-long celebration for corporations. That's next. Plus, the Department of Justice closes its investigation into former Vice President Pence's handling of classified documents days before the Republican is set to jump into the presidential race. What it means for the 2024 field and what it could mean for the Justice Department case. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. June is Pride Month, dedicated to celebrating lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people. But this Pride Month is shaping up differently than any in recent memory. Big-name corporations and companies are facing very public backlash for their more public support for the LGBTQ community. Target, Bud Light, and North Face have all come under heavy fire recently for their what had been just sort of normal yearly Pride campaigns and collaborations. This year, they have faced protests, boycotts, and even threats of violence from anti-LGBTQ activists and right-wing media. And they're not the only companies being thrust into the culture wars. It all comes as conservative lawmakers have ramped up legislation that targets the LGBTQ community with laws that ban public drag performances and, of course, limit gender-affirming care for trans people. My colleague Stephanie Goss has more on the pushback against corporate pride.
Target moved its Pride Month merchandise, including a transgender-friendly bathing suit, to the back of some of its stores after customer backlash.
Okay, these are like naked people in shirts.
Its stock price dropped more than 15% in 2 weeks.
I got some Bud Lights for us.
Bud Light marketed a customized can featuring transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney, triggering an outcry. Sales dropped nearly 30%. There are calls to boycott Kohl's because of its Pride-themed baby clothes, and North Face, the outdoor company, as well.
We like to call this little tour the Summer of Pride.
Transgender issues still seem strange and scary to people.
20 states have passed bans on transgender medical treatment for minors.
Does this very angry debate cast a shadow over some of the progress that has been made?
I think everyone is aware that issues that seemed to be settled just a few years ago are up for grabs again.
Pride organizers across the country tell NBC News Digital that their once eager sponsors are now more hesitant, growing fearful a backlash will target their bottom line.
And I'm joined now by Josie Caballero, Director of Special Projects at the National Center for Transgender Equality and a Forbes contributor. Josie, I appreciate you coming on here. Look, we're in a weird spot. We had gotten to the point where mainstream culture has changed enough that LGBTQ marketing is favorable enough for large corporations. We're now seeing this backlash suddenly come. What is your take on this moment? Because, I mean, just even last year through the previous decade, it felt like we'd moved beyond this.
Yeah, what we're seeing is an extreme ramp up of anti-LGBT ideologues, like some that you just shown, that are really causing this fervor, this anger in the community. It's only a small amount. And what you're starting to see is that when this fervor gets so loud and reaches a boiling point, it starts to reach a level where you're starting to see violence. And it's a very scary time right now.
What is happening in these executive conversations? I know you've been doing some reporting. You've had some of these conversations. What are you hearing? I mean, look, we know the one thing about corporate executives is that they can just be cowards. And I mean this in if they come from the left or the right, they want to just crawl under their desk. What are you sensing?
It's roughly that, right? When you see that 9 specific Target stores have gotten bomb threats, you also see Anheuser-Busch factories receiving bomb threats, and even the Clydesdale marches with the horses, you've been seeing these threats of violence. And so what's happening is that these executives are really having to do this balancing act, right? Where they want to market merchandise to, about 9-10% of the population that demands this stuff versus the backlash and the anger and the vitriol and the threats to their staff and their customer base. So it's a very hard time for them to realize, like, should we work in the side of profits and sell products, or should we try to look at the safety of our own staff and employees?
It doesn't feel like we have a place to litigate this. I mean, part of this, I think, spark obviously is coming from state legislatures that have been doing, it's political theater and on the right. I mean, we know what it's designed for, but like, where do we go for resolution here?
Absolutely. Well, a lot of this backlash is really starting to get loud because more and more people across the country, the general public, are starting to say, absolutely, it's okay for trans people and LGBTQ people to exist in my community. They're our family. There are leaders, our politicians, our friends, our postal workers. And because of people's, saying, yes, this is okay, the increased visibility of trans people thriving in public life and just regular life in general, that is what is the best solution to this problem. We also need to make sure that these corporations start taking real stances. This isn't about just putting a rainbow logo out on your community. This is more than that. And they have to make public statements to say, we're going to serve the people that want these products.
I was just going to say, we're about to learn who's an ally and who is simply, I don't know what you want to call it, pride washing, I guess might be a phrase.
Yeah. Absolutely, because now the rainbow logo actually means something, because the second you slap it on your organization, you're going to have extreme ideologues coming at you. And so really, we're going to see, like you said, who is going to stand by this this month of Pride right now, and we'll see who our real allies are and see if their activism was just paper thin.
Are you sensing that members of the LGBTQ community want to pull back on some Pride events for fear of violence?
Absolutely. I mean, there is the fear of violence everywhere. We talk about safety and basically keeping your head on a swivel, but we have to remember where the roots of Pride came from. It came from a protest in Stonewall, where our existence was just a crime just to be openly out. So the queer community is ready to show their pride like the queer community has throughout history. So we're going to go and we're going to be proud and celebrate what it is to be a part of this community, and we're not going to stop to show who we are and be visible in our communities.
It does seem as if this is a small band of loud voices that have used social media to gain traction. Do you see any responsibility here in social media companies, or is that just something that ship has so sailed there's nothing we can do about it anyway?
Well, you have seen the loosening of TOS, standards in the terms of use in some of these social media companies. So you've seen loosening behavior where on Twitter you can actually now openly misgender people, which is wrong. But honestly, we need to start calling this what it is. It's stochastic terrorism. These people are raising people's anxieties and anger, saying very explicit things like we're going after children, and it's causing these radical few voices to actually take up and do action. And yes, absolutely, social media companies are responsible for not holding these media figures to account.
Welcome back. The Republican field is set to expand by 3 next week. And as we mentioned up top, this week in the primary was all about the fight between the 2 frontrunners. But even as Trump and DeSantis tried to draw lines between their candidacies, they also frequently sing the same tune, particularly on culture war issues. So joining me now is our panel. Mark Murray, the NBC News senior political editor. Naveen Nayak, president and executive director of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. And Sarah Chamberlain, CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership. Mark, let's start with the expansion of this field and what it means. I keep looking at this as a reflection of Ron DeSantis, not Donald Trump.
That's right. And, you know, Chuck, I think early on, if we wanted to go right after the midterm elections, there was kind of a doubt whether even Donald Trump was going to be able to run, how big the field would end up being. But you end up seeing that the field has gotten larger as Donald Trump's lead has gotten larger in the Republican race. Yeah. And so that, I think, is if you are a Tim Scott or you're Nikki Haley, who all got in earlier, but now all of a sudden, if you are someone like Mike Pence, who actually has been laying the groundwork for this bid. This isn't a big surprise that he's getting in. Christie's maybe a little bit more of a surprise. And now North Dakota's Governor Doug Burgum is going to say, hey, I'm going to get in. But you say, hey, if you end up eliminating Ron DeSantis, well, then why not me? And I do think, though, it's important for us to be like, it's easy to get. We know what this is going to be. This is going to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, you know, over the next 17 months. But those of us who have followed and covered presidential campaigns, there's going to be the unexpected. We have to be humble that things could, something could end up happening that could knock Donald Trump off his perch.
Look, it feels like we all know it's probably going to be Donald Trump, but what about those indictments? But what about this, right? What about his own health, right? He is, you know, the actuary tables apply to both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, right? But Sarah, let me ask this. A Trump-DeSantis mud fight for the next 6 months benefits, I think, 4 people. Joe Biden, Nikki Haley, and Tim Scott. Maybe just 3. Maybe those are the 3 people. Because I don't know if anybody else in this Republican field can get the nomination other than the top 2 frontrunners and the 2 South Carolina.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to watch this. But I've always said the 2 of them would probably kill each other, and a third candidate would come up through the middle.
I mean,
I really do
this is the way it works
that.
in Senate primaries and gubernatorial primaries. It doesn't always work in presidential primaries.
It doesn't, but it's interesting. I'm predicting it's going to work, and I do think with the potential indictments coming, I think a lot of people think that Trump is going to get knocked out.
And if Tim Scott is in first place in Iowa by Thanksgiving, would that surprise you?
No.
Yeah.
No, he's a great candidate. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Because he's going to spend all this money. That's the thing. He's the Buttigieg here. Because Buttigieg went on the air, Elizabeth Warren didn't. Who became an Iowa frontrunner and who became an Iowa also ran.
It's true.
That would stun me. I'll go on the record and say that would stun me because
I'd be stunned if he's at first, but I would be stunned if he's
this is not an electorate that's looking for something different.
Yeah.
The primary elected, they're not looking for anything different. Think of everything that has happened since Donald Trump lost. January 6th, indictments, all these things. 70% of the primary is still saying, yeah, we'd be fine with that. Like, the difference, I think the challenge for Nikki Haley and Tim Scott is they're trying to sell something, you know, that we're going to look forward. Yeah. That is not really what the primary actually is saying they want.
Speaking of selling something that I'm wondering about, DeSantis went there a little bit on character in a radio interview. Take a listen to it because I feel like other people tried this with Trump and it didn't work. Take a listen.
I think it's so petty. I think it's so juvenile. I don't think that's what voters want. And honestly, I think that his conduct, which he's been doing for years now, I think that's one of the reasons he's not in the White House now.
So, political pundit Ron DeSantis there, I agree with him on his analysis about that's why he's not in the White House. But that isn't why he's the Republican frontrunner.
Yeah, Chuck, I go back to our NBC News poll that we had back in April, and this was like right after the indictments that we ended up seeing in New York and Donald Trump's, the charges brought against him. And we had 68% of Republican voters who say, hey, I want to stand behind Donald Trump, despite all of that. And again, that's not only just that episode that was after January 6th, after his 4 years in the White House. Many Republican voters have been conditioned to say, don't believe what the other folks are saying about Donald Trump, or they've always enjoyed the ride. Now, again, this could end up changing. Sarah, as you ended up mentioning, you know, does future indictments out of D.C. or Georgia end up impacting things? But that conduct, that's actually been fine with Republican voters over the last 7 years.
Donald Trump, though, mocking woke seemed like a bit off-key for Republican primary voters.
It certainly did.
Yeah,
I was kind of surprised by that. I'm like, oh,
right.
Okay.
Is he just upset that he thinks DeSantis has a better line on woke than he does?
Probably. I mean, I'm not even sure if he knows what woke really means.
By the way, does anyone?
I think it just reflects that his strategy is just punch where you think I can make a contrary point. There's no core. And I actually think that is what this primary is going to put on display I mean, candidly, what a dumpster fire the party has become. That they're going to have these petty fights. You hear about what's been going on these last 2 weeks. And I think that's going to just, there's
Sarah,
no
isn't this your fear
core.
that Trump does this? That
Yes.
You may want to say dumpster fire, but then
Right.
you're like, well, I'm going to see that image and that meme all over social media.
And the Republican Main Street Partnership members live in these tough districts still. I mean, we live in the swing districts, or we live in the Biden districts. So that's really a problem for us as we face re-election.
Let's talk Biden here a minute. I mean, it's interesting to me. Biden had an argument with the Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders wing over, can you work with Republicans or not? And Elizabeth Warren kind of mocked it. Joe Biden getting the last laugh?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, let's be honest. I don't think there were anyone who thought the promises he made 2 years ago of what he could get done would ever come to fruition.
You didn't believe it either, were you?
No, I mean, you had a 50-50 Senate. I mean, you had to try, and we knew reconciliation, but what actually has been the amazing thing is infrastructure, chips and science.
Where there were Republican
gay marriage,
votes. Right.
gun violence, now a budget. I mean, he has proven time and time again, in part because of his style, that he's not a flamethrower, that he is willing to find common ground. He has actually brought people to a very progressive position on a lot of these issues. And I think everyone's kind of underestimated just how steady and stable his leadership is.
Mark, as long as he's underestimated, it always feels like he's strong. It's when people start expecting stuff from him that he can stumble.
Or when you go beyond the I'm okay with the half a loaf in the politics. Look, I do think that the last couple of years has been kind of affirmation that compromise is possible. If your side isn't going to be able to win everything, but you get something, and you can say that that's producing. Look at the infrastructure package that was done, and obviously chips. You ended up even on guns. There was bipartisan agreement. It was minimal, but there was something that they could end up doing. I think there is a difference on the people who say, I want to shoot for the moon, and you don't end up getting that, and people saying, well, I'm not happy with the half a loaf. But that world of like compromise, and as long as your party controls at least one part of Congress, that was so. Does something like this end up happening if Democrats ended up losing the Senate and Biden's hand would have been so much weaker?
Sarah, I want to put up the House and Senate Republicans by percentages. 67% of House Republicans voted for this debt deal, and only 34% of Senate Republicans voted for this debt deal. I'm sorry. Speaking of not being surprised by something. That surprised. That wasn't on my bingo card.
That was shocking to me.
Okay. I want to know you
absolutely.
Shocked too.
Yeah,
okay.
It was. Absolutely.
What do you think that's about? Is the Senate Republican Conference getting more to the right, or are these a bunch of senators who saw a free vote and worry about a primary challenge?
I think they saw a free vote and they worry about a primary challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think it was.
Yeah. The thing that surprised me is why that calculus didn't play in the House. Right,
that's what I don't get.
It was a different setup in the House. It really was. Kevin really did a great job getting this all worked together. Yeah. So that's why it didn't happen.
I mean, 149 members. I'm sorry. I don't think anybody thought there'd be that many.
No, that's right. For especially a deal that, that I think Joe Biden sees really as just the price of stability, the price of having Republicans won the House, and that it really was. I mean, Joe Biden really won some things here that Republicans couldn't get.
The RNC put out its debate criteria today. It looks very similar to the criteria the Democrats had back in the day, and RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel said, hey, if they didn't say how many candidates does it take to create a second debate. We don't know. She just sort of left that door open that could happen. Quick, easy targets or not?
Hard.
Yeah,
on the 40, I think the 40,000 individual donors will probably be the hardest for if you are some of those candidates.
Chris Christie is going to be the toughest.
To be able to get in. Yeah. So, and then, but I also, to Von Hilliard's point that he made to you earlier, Chuck, Donald Trump hasn't signed that pledge, or the loyalty pledge. Who else is going to sign it? So I think that's also another.
What is the incentive for Trump to debate right now?
None.
Right.
None.
Zero.
Particularly if it's 2 nights.
Yeah.
I don't see the incentive is only there if he falls in the polls.
Right, and he won't. Right now, he won't.
That doesn't happen until when or if something out of the ordinary happens. Right. And that's been what we've said about Donald Trump. If, right, Naveen, Sarah, Mark, thank you. And if it's Friday, by the way, we got a new episode of Meet the Press Reports. It premieres tonight. This week, we're taking a look at some of America's most infamous modern-day grifters: Bernie Madoff, Elizabeth Holmes, George Santos, Sam Bankman-Fried. How did they succeed for so long? How did Americans fall for these schemes? To answer those questions, I sat down with a slew of journalists who've exposed this fraud and a psychologist who helps us understand the minds of scammers and why we can somehow be easily scammed. Here's a peek at this week's Meet the Press Report's deep dive into how we became a grifter nation.
You're going to get caught. One way or another. It's a mathematical fact. It's like Vegas. The house always wins.
The art of the con has fascinated the public in Hollywood for decades.
You want to be a grifter?
Grifter? Yes. But with trust in institutions eroding and the internet providing new opportunities to scam, grifters are showing up everywhere.
Just one drop of blood, and we can change the world.
A thief takes your money. A con artist or confidence man depends on persuading you, the mark, to give it to him or to her.
Con artists would not be successful if they weren't charismatic, if they didn't know how to manipulate you, if they didn't know how to manipulate your perception of them.
And of course, for whatever reason, we're always fascinated with these grifters. You can catch much more on my reporting tonight at 10:30 Eastern, and of course on Sunday right here on NBC News Now, and it'll be on demand on Peacock and YouTube starting on Sunday. After the break, the conflict in Kosovo. My one-on-one with the nation's prime minister as NATO steps in to try to de-escalate tensions in the region. That's next. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. The government of Kosovo is facing condemnation from the United States and Europe this week after violence has broken out in the country's north, a region whose population is a majority ethnic Serb. Ethnic Serbs within Kosovo boycotted local elections held in April en masse due to what they called provocations by the Kosovo government. Voter turnout amounted to just 3.5%. Now, a reminder, Serbia does not recognize Kosovo's 2008 independence declaration. The situation came to a head on Monday when Kosovo's prime minister moved to install the ethnic Albanian mayors who won in those elections. Serb protesters violently clashed with Kosovo police and NATO peacekeepers. Take a listen to a U.S. National Guardsman whose unit is deployed with NATO, describing the scene on Monday.
I saw myself injured K4 soldiers with shock bombs that were attached to glass bottles with small BB pellets and either alcohol or some type of fuel to cause a fire.
Today, French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz called on Kosovo to hold new elections in the region, while earlier this week, the U.S. benched Kosovo from an upcoming NATO exercise. So joining me now is the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Albin Kurti. Mr. Prime Minister, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with what the two European leaders have called for, new elections. You've suggested you're open to it. Is there a precondition? What would it take for you to agree to new elections in this region?
Obviously, mayors who won elections on 23rd of April have low legitimacy due to low turnout in these elections. But we called for all the people to participate in elections, but official Belgrade did a lot of pressure, threatening, blackmailing to Serbian people not to participate. Now, these mayors have low legitimacy, but they are the only one who are legal and legitimate. I do not dispute the necessity at some point for early elections, but beforehand, we should have a rule of law in place. And these violent extremists, these mobs that participated in these violent unrests, first they have to face justice and then to create preconditions for fair campaign, open campaign, and democratic elections.
What do you think it would take to encourage these ethnic Serbs to participate?
We have to stop Belgrade from bullying them. People want to participate. People want to be heard. But Belgrade does not want to have more than one party for Serbian community. In Kosovo, 93% of the population are Albanians. We have dozens of political parties. We have one Serbian party for 4% of population who are Serbs. And then we have other minorities, each one of them having several political parties, namely Roma, Ashkali, Egyptian, Gorani, Turks, and Bosniaks. So Belgrade wants only Serbian list to represent Serbian community. There can be no democracy without political pluralism. That's why we insist on creating preconditions for an open campaign. And I believe that international community could help us a great deal in enabling Serbs to freely express their will for their elected representatives.
Why do you think the United States, France, and Germany are a bit unhappy with how you guys have handled this situation?
What we have done was our duty. Lawfulness, constitutionality, respect for human rights, the respect for mayors who got elected and who have to go to their offices in the municipal buildings. But apparently, there has been too much worry on the side of Democratic West that President of Serbia might destabilize not only Kosovo, but the region. And there is this attitude, this approach of appeasement towards official Belgrade. And this is neither just nor beneficial.
Do you think China and Russia are encouraging Belgrade to stir the pot here, or do you think they could play a constructive role?
Kosovo is the most democratic country in the Western Balkan Six. We had great economic and democratic progress, especially in these last 2 years. We have no relations whatsoever, neither with Russian Federation nor with China. But to the opposite of this stands Serbia, which has a lot of Chinese investments and great military and energy cooperation with Russian Federation. I can assume that especially the Russian Federation does not want Kosovo to succeed as a country because we are a success story of NATO intervention in 1999 to stop Serbian genocide. And also we are a success story of economic development and democratic progress working together hand in hand. And there is a great struggle regarding narrative in 21st century. We are not a big country, but we are a great example that democracy and economy can grow together. So that's why I believe Serbia has directly or indirectly the support of all authoritarian regimes.
Do you believe that to quell the violence, do you believe that Kosovo law enforcement has behaved appropriately, or do you think there has been some escalation on your side as well?
There is no evidence whatsoever that Kosovo police behaved inappropriately. Kosovo police is the most professional police in Western Balkans. It has been trained for over 20 years by United States, by European Union countries, and by United Kingdom. So they are Western-oriented and Western-trained. On the other hand, we have these mobs. It's not about Serbian people. It's about certain orchestrated violent mobs who are there to destabilize Kosovo and to play for the larger hegemony of official Belgrade. You know, official Belgrade is in search for time machine. Sometimes they want to go prior to the year 2008 when we declared independence, and sometimes prior to the year 1999 when we got liberated. But there is no such thing as time machine. We have to look forward, and future is European Union, democracy, human rights, rule of law, NATO.
The summit in Moldova, we know that there was a brief meeting between the presidents of your country and of Serbia. We know that the French president and the German chancellor were there as well. Anything come out of there that can be built upon to create a peace here or a temporary solution?
We need to make sure that we are going to have a sequenced implementation roadmap, balanced and fair, of the basic treaty that we have adopted together with Serbia on February 27th in Brussels. This basic treaty has as its centerpiece de facto recognition, modeled upon two Germany's agreement from 1972, when they have decided this formula of live and let live, two countries living side by side. And I think that normalization of relations has to have implementation of this basic treaty. On the other hand, for de-escalation, we need these violent mobs, these extremists, either to go back in Serbia because this is where they came from in the first place, or to be arrested in Kosovo. And then early elections for sure. We cannot continue indefinitely with 3.5% of legitimacy. And at the same time, we need European Union to be active in this dialogue.
Well, just one last question, though. Why not set at least a date for new elections with the conditions? Why not put that on paper so that the other side knows you're serious?
Next week, special envoys from EU and US, Mr. Miroslav Lajčák and Mr. Gabriel Escobar will come to Kosovo, and we will discuss the details. So I believe also in early elections, but for that we need rule of law and free and fair campaign for free and fair elections.
Prime Minister Albin Kurti from Kosovo, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us to explain your perspective on this situation. I hope we can de-escalate here and see democracy thrive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still to come, migrant crossings at the southern border just hit their lowest point since Biden took office. Have you heard a lot about that? It defied expectations 3 weeks after the end of Title 42. We got some new reporting explaining this surprising data after a quick break. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. The surge of border crossings when Title 42 expired hasn't happened, at least not yet. In fact, the number of migrant crossings at the southern border has hit its lowest point since Biden became president. Perhaps that's why you didn't hear either DeSantis or Trump talk about the border this week. About 3,000 migrants have been stopped by Border Patrol officers each day, down from more than 10,000 a day just 3 weeks ago. Well, Julia Ainsley is here. She's been covering this crisis at the southern border essentially since she came to NBC News, as well as Title 42. And she joins me now. So, Julia, I don't think even Secretary Mayorkas thought it was going to be like this. Let's not kid ourselves.
They predicted chaos.
Yes, they did.
Yes. So anyone who tries to say it was just the media, we were going with the numbers they were predicting, they were modeling, they were testifying to Congress. We need more money because they thought they would be seeing 14,000 a day easily crossing the southern border. There were 60,000 migrants waiting in northern Mexico. Now we understand there are about 20,000 migrants waiting in those shelters. Some of them may have very well crossed before Title 42 lifted. A lot have not actually made it through. There's been more enforcement on the Guatemala-Mexico border, so some could be turned back there. Some are still living on the streets in Mexico, desperate to get in, trying this new app to see if they can get an appointment. But some of these solutions that are keeping the numbers low are temporary. In fact, a lot of DHS officials say by the end of the summer,
this is still duct tape.
Yeah, they're not taking a victory lap on this. And that's why we're not hearing much about it from Republicans or Democrats right now, because the situation is pretty tenuous.
So I hear about all these governors sending members of their National Guard. It's sort of a little bit of political theater. They all did it, and it was clearly an orchestrated campaign. 50 or 100. What do these folks do when they get there?
Well, certainly when they send them, it keeps the conversation going, even if the numbers
That's
are
clearly
lower.
What they're
but
trying to do,
because of our Constitution, they cannot be enforcing the law, domestic law, within the boundaries of the United States. So they're not handcuffing migrants. They're not processing migrants. They're there in an assisting role. I've seen National Guard hanging barbed wire, putting up barriers, trying to do more of the office paperwork so that Border Patrol can go out to the front lines. And that is an issue. I've heard Border Patrol chiefs say that they want at least 80% of their workforce on the front lines. But that was a concern when they were looking at 14,000 migrants crossing a day. Instead, you're going to be sending a lot of people to maybe not have that much to do. We saw that under Trump, certainly.
As we know, it's somewhat every time you think you plug a hole here, one opens up there. When's the next moment that we should expect a test of the system?
I would be looking at late summer, and here's why. The rainy season ends, so more people are able to go through the jungle, that Darien Gap, and there is a court case. The ACLU has challenged these new asylum policies that they put into place. That hearing's July 19th, and if that judge says they can't do that anymore, more people will start crossing the border.
Julia Ainsley with some important reporting there. Thank you, and thank you all for being with us this hour.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.